Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S24 and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now I will definitely tell you in almost every single way, the Galaxy S24 is probably going to be a pretty big upgrade coming from the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus. To be honest, the S23 Plus was a very good phone, but Samsung made some really big changes this year which I'm really happy about. And if I were to go ahead and basically recommend a single phone to some people, it may end up being the Samsung Galaxy S24 as of this point. But if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the outside of both of them, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus on the front of this particular phone has a 6.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's a very good display. I like this phone when it first came out, and it still is a very good panel in almost every single way. It's 1080p, but it's still a very good high resolution 1080p panel. It's 120Hz as well. It's a whole punch display, and without a doubt, it's easily, once again, one of the best panels that Samsung's ever made at that moment. It was very good. It's fairly bright as well, and I for one, like I said before, I was a fan of this panel without doubt when it first came out. Now, interestingly enough, the Samsung Galaxy S24 does have a little bit of a smaller display. So this particular panel is 6.2 inches. It's a 6.2-inch dynamic LTPO AMOLED display. It's 120Hz, so it still gets fairly bright. I'm still a fan of this particular display for the most part. And the big thing here is that with the S23 Plus, you were basically getting a phone that had a 1750 nits of brightness, display brightness on that one. The Samsung Galaxy S24 gets, 2600 nits of brightness. That is absolutely insane. The fact that you can get a phone that has that type of capability and that type of, screen, brightness is actually insane to me without a doubt. And that is probably one of the biggest advantages if you're going to go ahead and buy a phone. You want to buy a phone that looks like the Galaxy S24 because it really has that good of a display in my opinion. So from a display perspective, the S24 definitely wins here. Beyond that though, they're kind of roughly around the same thing. There's not like massive amounts of differences. You're also getting USB Type-C ports on the bottom of both of these, which is another cool thing. So I love having USB-C. Both have Samsung decks here too, which is pretty cool. Beyond that though, they're very similar there. You're also getting a complete flat side on the side of the Galaxy S24. The S23 Plus is completely curved. On the back side, they're almost exactly the same thing. So there really isn't that big of a difference here either. You're getting a triple camera setup, wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. You're getting the frosted glass back. There is a lot of overlap here for sure. And in my opinion, you're really not getting that big of a difference whether you're picking up something like the Samsung Galaxy S24 or the S23 Plus from like a premium feeling device perspective. Of course, there's reasons why the S24 is probably a little bit better here and there, but in my opinion, you're kind of getting a very similar type of experience on both these devices, which is actually very funny. You're just getting a bigger phone overall on the S23 Plus. Now, another interesting thing between these two phones is when it comes down to it, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus is a much cheaper phone than the Samsung Galaxy S24. The S23 Plus is costing about $569 right now. You have to remember, the S24 just came out and that's $800. So the S24 in the used market will possibly go down, further in, the price tag standpoint. But as of right now, you are going to be getting a, overall cheaper phone on the S23 Plus in the used market, which is probably a big thing that a lot of people need to kind of keep in mind. So from a, price standpoint, the, Galaxy S23 Plus is actually kind of a cheaper phone in some ways, which again is pretty insane. Now, from a camera perspective, there is definitely a lot of overlap here too beyond these two devices. So the thing you have to keep in mind and you have to kind of remember is that the Galaxy S23 Plus as of right now is giving you that triple camera setup, and so is the S24. Almost the same exact megapixel count for all these cameras, 50 megapixel wide, 10 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. And you're still getting a 12 megapixel camera on the front as well. So you're basically getting almost the exact same camera on both of these, which is actually very funny. Now you are getting 4K 60 on the front and back and 8K capability as well. That is insane. That is more than enough type of capability to have inside of a camera. But Samsung did mention something very interesting with this next generation of devices. They did actually mention that for the most part, if you're using applications like Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram and all those other apps, you might be getting a better experience overall on something like the Samsung Galaxy S24 over something like the Galaxy S23 Plus. So that might actually be a bigger advantage here, I would say, for something like the Galaxy S24. One of my biggest complaints throughout the last several years was basically with these social media applications and how those applications weren't really doing too well on those Samsung phones. But now it's looking like that Samsung has now made it a little bit of a better experience. Maybe we can now get a little bit of a better experience in those applications. I really hope that is the case. And from what I've tested, the Galaxy S24 is giving you a very good camera, but the S23 Plus camera is still very, very good. It's almost exactly the same thing if I'm being completely honest, and you're really not going to notice like these massive differences going from one device to the other in this, from that particular perspective, in my opinion. So take it as you will, but I think both these phones are very good. Like, you're getting very good type of cameras on both of these, and I probably would tell you when it comes down to it, you're probably getting overall the better camera on the Samsung Galaxy S24, but the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus is still an excellent camera when it comes down to it, without a doubt. Now, another thing here, you have to keep in mind, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus, one of its biggest advantages, I would say, was the fact that, it was going to be the longest lasting Samsung Galaxy when this phone came out, but Samsung completely dominated expectations. Now with the Samsung Galaxy S24, this is going to be a phone that's going to last so much longer in so many different ways. And what do I mean by this? Well, the S23 Plus is probably going to last maybe another 3 years, maybe 4 years if we're lucky. But with the Samsung Galaxy S24, this phone is just getting started. Like, this phone literally just, is getting started with software updates, but also this particular phone is also going to be getting 7 years of software and security updates. That's a pretty big improvement coming from the previous generation. So that in and of itself is another very big thing to keep in mind, because if you're going through and if you're buying, a Samsung Galaxy, you probably want it to be, one of the longer lasting phones, I'm sure. And that's exactly what's going on with something like the Samsung Galaxy S24. It's going to be a much longer lasting phone. So that right there is a very big advantage, I would say, for the Samsung Galaxy S24 over the S23 Plus. From a performance standpoint, you're going to be getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset inside of your Galaxy S23 Plus. Inside of your Samsung Galaxy S24, you're going to be getting that Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chipset inside. There's also a difference in RAM. So they both come out in variants with 8 gigabytes of RAM, but the S24, you can go up to, 12 gigabytes of RAM if you want to. So that is a pretty big advantage once again for that particular device. I don't think it's a big deal, but if you want to spec out a model of a phone that has more storage, you basically have that type of capability, which again is genuinely very cool. Now, from my perspective, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus is still a very good performing phone. I used this phone for a long time, not personally. I didn't use it as my main phone, but I used it for a side device, and I used a lot of devices with that 8 Gen 2 chipset, and it was very good. It was a very good, respectable chipset, and it was a good improvement from the 8 Gen 1. But I will tell you, the 8 Gen 3 is a good improvement from the 8 Gen 2. I would say the difference from the performance of both these phones is probably one of the smaller differences of, the devices in general. I think there's bigger differences like software longevity, and maybe I don't really know. I think the software longevity is probably the biggest thing, to be honest, and the cameras maybe in those social media applications. Beyond that though, I think the performance is very, very comparable. The thing I love about both these phones that have been on phones for so long now is the 120 Hz refresh rate. It definitely makes this phone feel and perform a little bit better just throughout the longevity of these devices, and it makes things feel fluid, which is something I love a lot with both these phones. So if I'm about to go and buy a phone, I definitely wanted to make sure it has that type of capability right there. But if I am buying a phone, I would definitely tell you the Samsung Galaxy S24 is giving you a really good performing chipset inside of it, and it is better than the S23 Plus, but I don't think it would be that big of a reason why I would go and upgrade from an S23 Plus to an S24. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll definitely tell you is, between both these devices, you were getting a really good experience on both these devices, in my opinion. I definitely would tell you a device like the Samsung Galaxy S23 Plus is very good. If you can buy it for a cheaper price than you can for the S24, or even if you can buy it for $500 something on Amazon, that's a very, very good price to pay for that type of device. Beyond that though, I don't know if I would recommend the S23 series over the S24. I think the S24 is such a good quality device, and I would recommend that device probably over the S23 Plus as far as I can tell. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.